Hello, and welcome to the 17Lands early data review for Phyrexia All Be One. The data this time actually there were some issues with it, it seems, early on in the process of getting it propagated to appear here, but now it's all here. We see all the stuff. We have all the lovely rares up at the top here. Now at least have a little bit of data. As of right now, Nissa is your best card in the set in terms of a games and hand win rate perspective, and I think that would probably be it's between it and Miglaw's sort of the opening hand win rate. You can argue. I mean, Shoulder's up there too, right? Like these are all really in contention for best card in the set. I think the reason Shieldred is not higher, I think Shieldred might be the best card in the set, but Black is. Oh, we'll get into what Black is a little bit later. So yeah, let's start where I usually like to start with this, which is the color performance. Generally focusing on the two color pairs. For reference, the average win rate in this set is 55%, which is actually a little bit low. For 17Lands users, usually it's closer to 56%, especially early. Usually it tails off as time goes on, but actually early on it's low. This format, which is interesting. It's an interesting phenomenon. You don't see it all that often. So yes, the best deck right now is Gruul. Red-green, 58.8% game in hand win rate. It has been drafted 34,000 times. The second highest drafted color pair is Boros at 22,000. It's a solid 12,000 more drafts by 17Lands users. 17Lands users know where the best deck is and understand how to draft it. So sort of I think that the sort of general consensus, and this is sort of the data agrees with this, is that Gruul's the best deck. Boros is a close second, I think, in terms of how good the decks are, and you can see that it is the second most winning deck. And after that's sort of your tier one, right? I think that's the tier one. I don't think that Orzhov is part of tier one. Its win rate has dropped significantly. It's 56%. The third highest winning, it's not even the third highest winning deck anymore. The third highest winning deck is now Selesnya, a much rarer deck than the previous two, and potentially an area of opportunity to be drafted. Might be the most underdrafted archetype in the format, it seems, at the moment, based on its positioning in the win rate statistics here. It's the third best deck. It's drafted it's the fourth, or maybe it's tied for with the Azorius for fourth, which is not a huge discrepancy, right? It's still drafted quite a bit, but actually no, yeah. So there's the games are sort of comparable to Selesnya and Izzet is awful. Don't draft Izzet. So yeah, so the Selesnya may be a little underdrafted. Orzhov and Azorius are sort of also part of that tier 2 of deck. I think that's sort of the delineation of decks. In that tier 1 is Gruul and Boros, and tier 2 is Azorius, Selesnya, and Orzhov, and tier 3, which is tier 3 is just Rakdos, I think, and then tier 4 is all the other ones. Yeah, there's some really, really bad archetypes. There's really this is the set in my limited experience that has had the most delineation between the good archetypes and the bad archetypes. There tends to be sort of a gradient that sort of goes from this wins 58% of the time, this wins 53% of the time, and it's sort of stuff goes in between those. That is not the case here. There are clear tiers in which the archetypes are falling into currently. There are clearly places you want to be and clearly places you do not want to be. Namely, you want to be in the aggressive red archetypes, Gruul and Boros. You do not want to be in the slow red archetypes of Rakdos and Izzet, or anything with blue in it, other than Azorius. So blue, and we'll see that blue's win rates are. I'm actually going to compare to AFR to see if they're that bad. I don't know if they're that bad. Haven't actually looked, but we will look. And of course, this is early data, so it's going to change. Its win rates are likely to improve over time as people recognize what the good cards and colors are. So yeah, that's a baseline for the format in terms of color pairs. A very rare situation where Gruul is the best deck. It has not happened in a very long time, if ever, on 17Lands data. So that's exciting. It's an exciting new thing. Maybe not everyone's cup of tea, the format requirements to make Gruul the most winning deck in your format. All right, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time looking at anything else because you're never splashing in this format. It's just not a splash format. It's really, really bad. This is like worse to splash than normal. Like, it's just really atrocious. And monocolor decks are very difficult to make work. So, you know what? We are going to look very quickly at the play draw advantage. I was looking at this earlier, and you will see that here it is. Here is the updated real data. I know people have been sharing the image of the chart. The chart is, whatever, the sort of outdated image. This is the real image, the real data, the data that has been for the first week or so. And yeah, it's the fastest draft format on Arena, and it's not especially close. And that could always change. You see HBG here. I think it's possible that it ends up sort of closer to HBG by the end of the format, but maybe not. Maybe it's just too aggressive for that to be the case. Generally, formats tend to slow down over their time of existence because people start to know which cards are good, and so it's harder to get faster synergized decks that win as fast. So it's likely to slow down, but I think that for now it's a good place to start. And we're of course going to start with the commons here. Looking at the cards, I'm going to look at some cards, and we're going to start with white. So white was, I think, the consensus pre-format existence. I'm looking at mono white. That's not what I want to be doing. I was like, why does Crawling Course have such a high win rate? I don't know. It's still great, but here we go. It was the consensus best color before the format came out, and I don't think that's the case anymore. I don't think people believe it's the best color. I think people believe red is the best color, and I would tend to agree with that. But white is still a very good color. White is still probably second best, in my opinion. I think in terms of its relative strength, and it's on the back of Basilica Shepherd and Crawling Chorus, as well as Planar Disruption. So this is really your tier 1 of commons, right? You have your 5-drop flyer that kind of takes over the game. When you cast it, it just is really hard to deal with all of the resources this generates. It's just not something that's easy to deal with. And similarly, Crawling Chorus on turn 1 is equally hard to deal with because it generates a lot of resources in decks that care about getting your opponent corrupted, which white does sometimes, although I think generally not all the time. It's a good thing to have. Things to note about Crawling Chorus are that you don't need to care about Toxic to play it in your deck. You should just play it in your deck because it's a good 1-drop, and 1-drops are important in this format. Like if you're playing a Crawling Chorus just to be able to block other Crawling Choruses, I think you're doing it right. I think that's what you want to be doing. So, and here it is. Here's the pacifism. I think everybody sort of saw this early on and said, "Yep, that's just efficient enough, right?" Like pacifism is usually bad. However, this aura is better than pacifism in that it prevents ability. It's basically like what's it called? The enchantment from Neon Dynasty. That there's been tons of reprints of it. Usually this costs 3 mana, basically, to not allow the activated abilities, but this one only costs 2, and so therefore it sort of is that difference between 2 and 3 mana. I think if this were 3 mana, it would be pretty unplayable. I think it would be like unplayably bad. I think it would be awful. I think it would probably be one of Void's worst commons if this costs 3 mana. So yeah, continuing sort of on here, we have another suite of sort of like cards sort of synergize with themselves. There's a little bit of like toxic stuff. Like all of White's commons kind of have toxic 1. which is very nice. At least all the good ones do. Because you really want to have access to this complete devotion. And if you can cast, if complete devotion is always drawing you a card, it's a really, really strong spell in your deck. So that's where you want to be for sure. This card has surprised me, the Indoctrination Attendant. It has been a very surprising card in that I sort of, when I saw this at first, I didn't think really anything of it. I was like, oh, it's 4 mana, 3/4, whatever. But you get a lot of value when you return the thing to your hand, especially with the equipment, the aforementioned equipment, and you can always return a land with this too, which maybe is not especially clear the first time you read it. But yeah, just again, generating like resources that you can eventually use to overwhelm your opponent is good. So let's look at some of the highest discrepancies between the game in hand win rate and the ALSA, which is average size CNAT. So we see that Planner Disruption is the #1 ALSA card, followed by Fluencing Raptor and then Duelist. So I think most people are believing that white is this kind of toxic deck that really cares a lot about corrupting your opponent, and it seems that the data indicates that that's generally not what you care about or should care about in the best decks. And I think the best decks are red-white, generally. So yeah, that's necessarily not necessarily caring as much about toxic, and so that can corrupt the set a little bit as well. I'm really surprised that Charge of the Mites is also so low or high, or however you want to think about it. Because when I first saw the card, I thought it was terrible. I was talked up on it a little bit, and watching some other people's set reviews, I thought the card was like really, really bad because I thought neither effect was really good. So it's actually overperformed my expectations, but it has underperformed a lot of people's expectations. So I guess we kind of met in the middle there, me and the consensus on that one. The most value card, I think, is probably maybe Zealot's Conviction, maybe Sinew Dancer, Complete Devotion, but that one sort of has like reasons. So yeah, I mean, there's not really a ton of like cards that are like super, like you can get super, super late that are super, super premium. We'll see that a little bit more later, and that's white. Commons you never want to play are this common, which again, if you ever thought this was going to be playable, I don't know what game you've been playing for the last like 2 years. This thing, like 6 mana like removal, is not playable. So I have played this card and I think that it kind of sucks, but it's okay. Next, blue. Do I even have to look at blue? Well, first thing I think you'll notice about blue's commons is that the highest win rate one is lower than the average win rate for 17Lands users globally, which is bad. For when your color has that as its highest win rate card, and it's a 3 mana 1/4, and I can say Taxian Raptor is genuinely a good card. It's decent, like it is a decent blue card, and I'm happy to have it in my blue decks, of which I have played 2. So I trophied with both of them. Actually, no, that's not true. I did play a third blue deck. So I played 3 blue decks, and I have trophied with 2 of them. So maybe I should play blue more. No, I don't think I will, actually. But I do think blue has its place in the metagame in some ways. Yeah, so really with blue, as I mentioned earlier, blue-white is kind of the only place that the color works. And so you kind of just want to playing a bunch of artifacts, and I think you can see that with Chrome Prowler and Malcator's Watcher as its sort of second best common. Like, it also Eye of Malcator. Like, this sort of artifacty package thing is kind of what blue wants to do. My sweet child Glistener Seer has absolutely no place in this format because there's too many 3/1s and it doesn't attack. Though I wish it had the chance to shine. It never got a chance. It basically doesn't have a home in the format, unfortunately. The format is too fast for any of the stuff blue was trying to do. When I mentioned in my review sort of about this 2 mana instant sorcery package of Experimental Augury, where is it? Prologue to Phyresis and Bring the Ending. I sort of thought that I was just sort of hoping that you would be able to just hold people off with the one drop, but it just doesn't. It doesn't do a good enough job at holding off the two drops in this format. There's just too many 3-power two drops, and it just lines up really, really poorly. So yeah, in contrast to the last one, we will see that Mesmerizing Doze is also as a 4.6, where I think the best at white is 2.98, which is pretty significant. People are pretty averse to it. I think this is the lowest by like a considerable margin that we've seen in a long time. And actually, just to humor myself, we are going to go look at AFR the last time. I guess you could argue HBG was the last time, but AFR was like the last set where it was true. And similarly, we see that this guy, oh man, this was really Blue's best. Oh boy, it's got all the same cards, guys. It's even got Charm. How did we not see this? How could we not have foreseen that Charm Sleep being Blue's best uncommon or Blue's best common? Whatever, from like an Alsa perspective, how could we not have foreseen? But yeah, it's a pretty bad scene, right? It's a 56% win rate for that, and I think that this is likely to get somewhere near that. Maybe I think the average win rate in AFR is a little higher too, so this is like kind of close. It's still a little. It's like a little worse win rate wise than AFR, which is, oh boy, not where you want to be. Unlike AFR though, there is a deck that functions with the blue cards in it, so you can draft the blue cards. Next, black, a color that I think is worse than blue, for reasons that I'm about to get into. And the reasons are this. There is one good common in black, and it is Anoint with Affliction, and it's very good. Don't get me wrong. It is very good. It's very strong, especially if you can enable it. It's good in white-black. But it basically is the only card that I want to play that is a black card. Things that I noted, Testament Bearer is tied with Stinging Hivemaster for the second best performing black common. I noted its relevance in games, and when I played it for my pre-release, I noted that it surprised me in terms of its playability. I thought it was going to be completely unplayable. It turns out it might be black's like second best common. Which is pretty sad. It's a pretty sad state of affairs, right? It's because it's not a good card, really. It doesn't block especially well. It loses to Blast, Hazardous Blast in red, which is a card that is taking over the format, taking it by storm. Of course, you have the Stinging Hivemaster. Here's Stinging Hivemaster, perfectly serviceable. A card I was down on from my pre-release. I thought it was awful. But that just should have told me that black was awful, and black is awful. Now, as per the Dross, I'm surprised it's performing this poorly. It has been very good in the decks that I have played that are black, which I think is exactly one deck. I played one black deck. Because it's never open. You know what's funny, right? Like when I saw the previews for this set, I was like, oh, I'm never playing black because there's too much good common removal. And here I am, having played black like 0 times, basically. The only time I played was because I opened Kaido. It's just like, I can't take a deck. Like, I just can't do removal.deck. Like, it's just not a deck. That's not a deck that I think can win in any Magic format, let alone this one, right? Like, it just never works. So, Duress is, I think, the worst win rate card in the entire set. There are some other bad ones. This is surprisingly low for the Rat, but it kind of makes sense because it lines up so poorly against the other 2 drops. The Siphoner is a card that is bad but required in many decks. So its stats make sense, but if you're in white-black, you probably need to play it, even though it's bad. Like, you find you sort of end up in these like races where you're racing an opponent that you never can beat because you can't get to 10 poison counters faster than they can just kill you. Pestilence Siphoner. In terms of any value, there is no value to be found. people know which black cards are bad, except for maybe Testament Bearer. Testament Bearer would be the one card that I would say, yeah, you can probably get this later than you should. And you should feel free to play it. I think if you're playing black, you should play Testament Bearer. I think the deck that wants it most, that is a black deck, would be Rakdos, actually. Maybe one. I don't think you want it in green-black, because that deck basically has to kill with poison, or else it doesn't do anything. I don't think you want it in blue-black, because it's too slow and doesn't block. I don't think you want it in white-black, because it doesn't have Toxic on it. Maybe you want it in white-black. So I think white-black and red-black would be the decks for this, but don't worry about it. Just don't, like shallow color pairs are inherently worse to draft. Like, I would rather draft blue every time than black, I think. Just because blue, despite, like, having worse cards than black, because it's archetype, like, it's one archetype that's good, is strength, is slightly worse than the black's one archetype's good strength. It's just difficult to do. We'll look at uncommons in a moment here after we get to red and green. Now here we're back to bangers, ladies and gentlemen. We are back to bangers. Chimney Rabble in red. Now this is oh man. And talk about a late pick, 6.12 Alsa for this card that is nice. Now people know a little bit. Used to like a couple days ago, you were wheeling these. Like you can still wheel these sometimes. If you've played with the card, you understand. Like, this card's great. Some people saw this and were like this, like in the pre-release season, and didn't think it was going to be good for some reason. I don't know what it is about this card that people think is bad. I thought was bad. I don't know. It's kind of clearly in sort of its own tier here. It's even like a whole like percentage point above Hexgold / Batterfist, both of which are very solid and you definitely want in your decks. And then coming in at number 4, Hazardous Blast, a card that is truly performing very, very well for me. It has its bad spots, right? Like you probably don't want to play more than 2 max, but like that first copy of this card is really strong. Like it is really, really strong. It is taken really, really late, and it's part of the reason Red's been so successful in this format, right? Like when you have a color, to have a color be as dominant and consistently draftable as red is, you have to have these discrepancies between where players view the commons and how strong they are performing. And red clearly is exhibiting this. Similarly, Axiom Engraver, 6.37. Shouldn't be there. Should be like 4, something like that, in terms of because it's like the 5th best red common. You have Furnace Strider, another one that goes really late, partially because it's a 5-drop, which does make sense. Free from Flesh goes really late. I should probably be playing it more, to be honest with you. And there's Volt Charge. So Volt Charge, and part of the reason like red is so successful, right, is again you have this discrepancy. So you have the players that don't know what they're doing that take Volt Charge because they think it's good, and Volt Charge is not good. It's fine. It's like a fine card. You should play. You should never cut it, right? Because it is removal. But the text. It doesn't have any other text. Like the proliferate text almost doesn't matter on the card ever. I have seen it come up way less often than you would think, especially in like red, where it just doesn't matter to red as much because red sort of like has other ways to get its oil counters and stuff. Yeah, and so you sort of have like all of these cards. Like here's Shrapnel Slinger. Shrapnel Slinger is red's like. Like the first common that is worse than a blue common is Sawblade Scamp, I think. Let me see. Let me check it again. Yeah, the first red common that is worse than the top blue common is Sawblade Scamp, and it is the 12th. 14th. It is the 14th common. It is red's 14th common. There are only 17 commons. So basically every single red card is better than the blue cards, which is so problematic for color balance and draft enjoyment long term in a set. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like these discrepancies are really why the color is so strong. Now, Hexgold Slash is getting taken more highly, but like this should be getting taken higher than Planner Destruction, or at about the same place, and it's not. People just don't recognize how efficient the card is in this format. It really does hit. Like, sometimes if you hit a thing with Toxic, it is just a complete game ender, right? Like, you just spend 1 mana to kill, like, their 3-drop or 4-drop, and you're just like, okay, I just win, right? That happens a lot. So, yeah, red, I mean, there's tons of hidden gems in red. Basically, every single common is playable. And, yeah. That's a bit it. Now, green is a little bit different. So green does have some truly bad ones, right? But green's high end is high. So green is the most normal color in the set, and why I think it is the third best color in the set. And I think its data indicates that it is the third best color in the set. So you have Contagious Vorak, arguably the best common in the set. It is definitely making an argument. It's insanely good. Lattice Blade Mantis, a very undervalued card. As you can see, it's also is a little bit high for where it should be, given its relative win rate. Ruthless Predation, Solid Removal Spell, and Cultivator, another underrated one that goes extremely late and can win you games by itself because extra mana is still good, you know. So you have this Oil Gorger Troll as well. So now Oil Gorger Troll is weird, right? So it doesn't have the best stats on planet Earth, and it doesn't feel the best to play. With that, I'm just going to sort of go down the list here. You got, and it's kind of like, it's sort of weirdly positioned, right? Because if you're in a green deck, you kind of want to be fast generally, and it is not fast at all. So the only deck it really fits in is blue green, but blue green is especially great. Though I have had some success with it, and I think you can have success with it, and I think that you will be able to have success with it later on in the format as people start taking the red cards higher. So yeah. And after that, it really falls off. Like, Satanic Growth is not a card I'm especially happy to play, and like many of these cards are not. I have seen more people playing this lately. This card is truly awful. Lost to it today, but you know, they really lost to the black rare. But yeah, you can sort of get down to these really bad ones that just don't do anything. And you see sort of this is a normal common win rate distribution, right? Like you have your top common, your grouping of above average commons, you have your average commons sort of right here, and you have your below average commons, and it's a fairly decent normal distribution. I think that's why green is the best color. All right, let's move on to uncommons. Now green has some good uncommons. This is part of the reason green is good. You have Evolving Adaptive and Cankabloom. But Evolving Adaptive is the second or fourth. I think it's the fourth highest opening hand win rate card in the entire set, because if you play it on turn one, the game basically just ends. How do you ever beat Evolving Adaptive on one? The answer is you do not. Cankabloom has insane amounts of versatility and is an extreme annoyance for your opponent. Scrap Gorger provides a lot of mana and a late game attacker. Incubation Sac provides a lot of late game value as well, and it plays especially great with Hazardous Blast, because you just make a bunch of 3/3s that block your opponent's stuff, and then eventually you go, alright, kill you. So that's really good. Tyvar Stand is a very solid trick that protects your stuff. Infectious Bite's decent spell. Battle Chair is just large. Viral Spawning is sort of like where the cutoff is. It's not especially great, but you're always going to play it. And then you get to the Trap card. This is a trap. People take this card very, very highly. Venomous Brutalizer. It is actually the fourth highest picked uncommon in green, and it is garbage, because one, you're never getting to 6 mana to like proliferate, and if you do, you're going to have nothing to proliferate because your board is going to have nothing on it because you didn't play this on 4. So it's basically like the other text on the card doesn't matter, and you're basically only getting a 4 mana double color, double pipped 4/4, which is not especially fantastic in a game of limited magic these days. But most of the other ones people sort of have, right? People love removal, man. And this card is great too, and I'm not going to argue with it here. But yeah, that's green. Its uncommons are really, really strong, at least the top 7 or so of them. And that's where a lot of green strength comes from. So back up to red. Red actually doesn't have as many good uncommons as green does. Its uncommons are a little more middling. but Ripple Salvo is especially efficient and often costs 2 or 1 mana in this set, and when it does, it's just like completely ridiculous. The card is really, really good. This card has surprised me quite a bit, Hexgold Halberd. I thought that this ability wouldn't really matter, like you'd never be re-equipping this, but you actually run into board stalls a decent amount of times in this format, and you can re-equip this to sort of help push through damage, and it is very effective at doing that. If you use like another card that surprises me just because I thought it was going to be too low impact on the game, but it turns out it just isn't. It is one of the very few proliferate things that works in red and is very aggressive about it. And so it does sort of scale with the game a little bit. It's not quite as well as Evolving Adaptive. It's a little bit embarrassing compared to Evolving Adaptive. But at least it's got Trample to make up for all that embarrassment. It plays especially well with the red combat trick that gives oil counters, turns it into a 5/3 for 2 mana. That's really strong. Furnace Punisher, another good one. And then we sort of get into the middling stuff in this card, which is bad. But everybody knew that. Don't play this, by the way. Like, there's no deck that's good for this. Like, there are people who will like tell you that there's decks where this is playable. They're lying, and they do not have your best interest in mind. Black. Once again, removal sort of at the top of the pile for black. Another very efficient removal spell, and Drowninicker as black's best uncommon, which again sort of makes the color very difficult to play because you have all this like removal that's efficient, but you don't have any creatures that are actually good. The Skull Dweller is very solid, but sort of only plays in black-white and green-black, and green-black is not very good. So it sort of is tough. And you've got a bunch of other mediocre stuff that's kind of too slow for the format, right? You've got like Necrosquito, Scheming, like all this stuff is just kind of whatever. Nimrazer Paladin's good, but it's too slow. Skitterling is fine, but it's way too slow. Vat Emergence, similar. This guy, similar. You just can't sacrifice creatures on your battle. There's just no time to be playing stuff in black and whatever. And on to blue. Youngtis' Retrofitter. Its stats are depressed because of how poorly blue is performing, but it is still managing to get a above average win rate. I believe it is the it and Tamiyo's Immobilizer are the only blue cards. Tamiyo's Immobilizer is basically just this one. This one's technically above average, but it's not really. Like this one is actually above average blue, common, and uncommon cards. So potentially the worst color ever in limited blue in this format, which is unfortunate. Trawler Drake I have found to be somewhat decent if you can have it not die. Distorted Curiosity is surprisingly playable considering how fast the format is. However, it is still not where you want to be. And there's just all these ones. Like I hope that Minor Misstep gets enough plays that people like that we get stats for it, but I don't think that it will. We've got 2 games in hand, or no, we have 2 games in hand so far with it. But I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, blues uncommons are fine. I don't really have anything interesting to say about them. White's uncommons, here's some good ones. Annex Sentry. Wow, that is a good one. Easily identifiable too. I think everybody sort of saw this coming. It is just a very, very efficient 1/4 that removes their one of their early creatures and basically puts you ahead on board. It's actually very, very difficult to kill this with anything other than Hexgold Slash. Hexgold Slash is the only answer basically in the entire set to this. So it just never dies either. And a lot of times it's like not worth it for you to kill it because you don't get something back and you're only killing a 1/4. It's just, it really sort of does all the stuff you want. Ossification, another very solid removal spell, and Bladed Ambassador, a solid 2-drop that is aggressive. Sweeping Lookout is a surprise for me anyways, and just sort of goes to show the importance of 1-drops in the format. I think it's a little underrated at the moment. Maybe not super, super underrated, but maybe a little underrated. And yeah, that's sort of like the Jawbone Duelist is sort of the end of the top end of uncommons. We get to like Porcelain Solid, a fine card, but I think a little overhyped at the moment at a 3.39. White Onslaught, I think, is fairly decent. I actually have had good experiences with this. I've had it be fine. Like, you can play a copy of this in some decks, and it's fine. I have also had this be fine sometimes. I don't know. People have said that this card is fine. I don't know about that, but like, I'm sure you can do it in equipment decks. I just haven't seen it. I have lost to it once, I think, but whatever. Once again, I am telling you that anybody who told you that Infested Flesh Cutter was going to be playable and limited needs like to find a new career. Like, this card like was never going to be good. It is not good. Do not play it. I don't want to see this card on the battlefield anymore. Actually, I mean, I do want to see it because it means I'm going to win. I have yet to. Well, have I lost to this card yet? I don't think I have. I've seen it like 5 or 6 times. When my opponent plays this on turn 2, it's like, that's game. Like, that's the ball game right there. Like, you're never gonna have time to equip this, and that's it. We're gonna get into the multicolor uncommons. I'm recognizing that I did not mention the colorless commons, but it's because none of them matter. We'll take a look at them in a moment. All the colorless cards after this section here. And we can see a little bit of a surprise, Bladehold Warwhip. It's actually I think, 5th best performing card in the entire set by game and hand win rate. It is a very, very strong card. It's hard to deny its efficiency. It really does do a lot in the game to make it so that you make a 2/2 that blocks especially really, really well in the end of the game against the other 2 drops. It attacks really well. It makes your other stuff attack well in the super late game when there's board stalls. It makes your other equipment better, which you do want to play, actually. And yeah, it's just really solid all around. So, it's just really great. Similarly, Cinderslash Ravager is just an absolute truck. There's so many X1s in the format, including the Mites, that just kind of sit there because they don't really block. They can't block and they don't attack very well. So, yeah. And then you have Slaughter Singer, rounding out the trio of Naya color pairs at the top of the ladder here, and that's not a surprise because they are the 3 best decks in the format. Followed by Cephalopod Sentry, a card that is, again, solid in its color pair. Maybe not the 4th best color pair, although I think it's trending that way. I think Blue-White is actually going to end up being better than Blue-Black fairly soon. We could see Vivisection Evangelist not so good as this one. And we get into sort of the lower ones that just kind of don't quite get there or are too slow. Specifically these flyers that they just are too small for their stage of the game, right? They just don't do anything. Blue-green actually doesn't care about this at all because blue-green is not trying to toxic kill your opponent. Blue-green is trying to just make oil and survive. It's not trying to do that. So, yeah. Showing the irrelevance of the improvement when drawn statistic is that this thing has a positive improvement when drawn for some reason, despite the fact that it's terrible. So, all of these do, which is interesting. I don't know. You tell me. This card is kind of the fact that this card's not busted really tells you that blue-black is suffering in this format, right? Let's look at the colorless cards. There are very, very few that matter. I'm just going to sort of talk about all of them, including the sword. The Skitterfang actually the best performing of the colors over Masticore, a card that I thought was really good early, but has sort of tumbled back down to earth and is just sort of average. It started out really strong, and then now it was the hardest card ever to evaluate if it was good in the pre-release. I had no idea. And then early on, I was like, oh, this is great. I've played with it a couple of times, and it was great for me in my decks. And then now it kind of sucks. I don't know. And then you sort of get to oh, the 4th best is a land. So it just sort of shows you all the stuff that's going on in terms of the colorless. The Skull Bombs, some notable things about colorless cards are the Skull Bombs are all sort of bad. They're all bad. I think even the red one is bad. I don't remember where the red one is. Sort of the blue one is the best, I think, of them. And it still is just too slow. So, notable that these lands are performing pretty poorly, and people generally do not want them. So, Be advised. Don't take them that much. Discard. You can't play Phyrexia and Atlas in this format. It's just not doable. Injector is interesting. Its win rate is terrible, though I think that in some decks it is potentially playable. Because it does like do the toxic thing. You shouldn't play it in decks where you're not trying to kill with any way other than poison, but if you are trying to kill with poison, I think it is potentially decent. Alright, that's kind of it for like the colorless cards. There's really not a whole lot to say about them. Most of them are kind of bad. Terramorphic Expanse falls right in the a little too slow. Like you'll still play. Like I think you should still play one of these. Probably wouldn't play 2 though. Like normally you'd play 2 in every deck. I think in limited, I think you might only play 1 in this format. Max. Be advised. Yeah, I mean, it's like it's colorless stuff really didn't have that much of an impact on this format at all. And we will now begin looking at the rares and mythic rares of the set. The best cards, just all the best cards, no matter the rarity. As I said earlier, we do have Nissa and Shieldred atop the table, which actually I think has just changed as I was doing this, because it used to be Miglaws and then Shieldred. So now we've seen live data updates, so that's fun. Eternal Wanderer at number 4, although I did just go 2-3 with the deck containing the Eternal Wanderer. That was a red-white deck, and you know, we're just gonna go over. We're just gonna do a little bit of salt. We're just gonna do some salt reviewing, because I'm mad about my losses. That's okay though. That's okay. I don't know how this deck. I mean, the deck is not like super fantastic, right? It has the Eternal Wanderer and kind of like a bunch of like nothing. It has good 2-drops though. I never drew like any of these Axiom Engravers, which was unfortunate. These were terrible, but not like a surprise, to be honest. I just played them just to try them out a little bit. I could have probably played like this instead, might have been better. Probably playing a little Volshock Splitter. I don't know. I kind of needed 3-drops. Yeah, people just know, you know. So, anyways, back to what we were talking about. And then Blade Hole War, number 5, a very impressive showing for an uncommon. It is Wingmantle Chopper levels. It is Zenith Flare levels of uncommon efficacy in a limited format. We do not see this high of a win rate on uncommons very, very often. It is very surprising. Its alpha is 4.23, one of the lower ones in the set, and it truly is a card that you should pick exceptionally highly. I would not take it over Luca, but I also wouldn't take it over White Sun's Twilight, for the record. I probably would take it over Archfiend to the Dross, I think. The real issue with it is that it's 2-colored instead of being monocolored. But similarly with Cinderslash Ravager, like you should take Cinderslash Ravager over. Like I think I would take Cinderslash Ravager maybe over Archfiend to the Dross, because Archfiend to the Dross did just beat me, like, absolutely destroyed me recently. But it's a black card, for lack of a better word. I'm surprised at how high Elish Norn's win rate is, given that it basically like a lot of the time is just a 5-mana 4/7 that kind of doesn't really do anything. But there are a lot of, I guess there's just more ATBs than you think, right? Like just things entering the battle, like your opponent's stuff not doing things is good. So it's very solid. We have the old Praetors and other Vorinclex is very solid in this format. It's honestly a little surprising that it's this high, considering that it costs 6 mana. But you know, Thrun, it's barely beating Thrun here, which is not that like Thrun's great. Although Thrun, some people will tell you like it's impossible to deal with other than just racing mostly. So yeah, Urbrass Forge is another really great card, and you see the Evolving Adaptive just performing highly. Now this is an interesting sort of little unique thing in the format. Now Atrax's stats indicate that it is sort of worth doing the thing. Now it only has 581 games in hand, so that's maybe a little light in terms of like how much I'd like to actually think that this is like representative at all. But that seems like you can do the thing, which is really surprising. But there is, I think, sort of the theory behind why you can do it is there's always going to be fixing available because nobody cares about fixing because the format's too fast. And yeah, I think that's kind of it for the set review. We talked about sort of some of the overarching themes. The red green meta is here for the first time in a long, long time. Bladehold Warwhip is the new Zenith Flare, and Shouldered's back at the top. It's back. These three keep shuffling. There's like I don't know how live updating the data is, but it seems to be updating now. So I'm gonna end the video there because I don't want it to update again. It made me look bad. That would be bad. I don't want to look bad. I want to look good. That's what we want. So all right, that's it. See ya.